Okay, 130:19. Okay, so the objective. Today we want to talk about zero exponents and negative exponents. Talk about zero exponents and negative exponents, okay? So it turns out, and I'm going to write it, but I'm going to show it first, okay? Anything to the zero power is 1. Anything to zero power is 1. I mean, check it out. If I go like a 3x squared, but if it's to the zero power, anything to zero power is the number 1. It's just the number 1. Anything to the zero power is always going to be the number 1. So zero exponents. So we can say x to the 0 equals 1. So anything to the 0 power is always just number 1. It's just 1, like the number 1. Does that make sense? So we see anything to 0 power. For instance, I've got, in example 1, I've got a z to the 0. I'm just going to make that the number 1, okay? Now, negative exponents. Negative exponents need to be moved, okay? So when you see negative exponents, I want you to first think about a fraction. And in a fraction, you've got a top part called the numerator, and you got the bottom part called the denominator, okay? Right? If you have a negative exponent, it's on the wrong side. It's on the wrong side, okay? So if you have a negative exponent, it needs to be moved to make it positive. So if it's on the bottom, it's negative on the bottom. You move it up to make it positive. If it's negative on the top, you move it down to make it positive. So negative exponents need to be moved either down or up to become positive exponents. So it's not hard. 2 things. Anything is 0 power, the number 1. Okay? Anything is 0 power, the number 1. A negative exponent just needs to be moved. If it's a negative exponent on the bottom, you move it up, it becomes a positive exponent. If it's a negative exponent on top, right, you move it down to make it positive. Okay? So let's check out example 1. So when I see negative exponents, I think fraction. Okay? So I write a fraction bar right off the bat. First thing I do, okay? Start with a fraction, okay? So if it's a negative exponent, it moves down. So I would take this x to the negative 3, it becomes an x to the positive 3, okay? Simple. Y to the 5th. It is just y to the 5th. It's not negative. It's just going to stay y to the 5th. And 0, z to 0 is just the number 1. So we put a 1. Now I don't need the 1. You guys agree? The 1's there, but I don't really need the 1. So I might simplify this as just y to the 5th over x to the 3rd. Alright? It's a negative exponent. It needs to be moved, either up or down. Anything to the 0 power becomes 1, the number 1. Not z to the 1, but just plain old number 1. Okay? Thumbs up? Okay, let's look at example 2. So example 2, I see negative exponents. So what I do is I think fractions, okay? Think fractions, right? So 4/8, those are just regular numbers. Regular 4/8, which reduces to 1/2. You guys okay with that? 4/8, those are regular numbers. 4/8 becomes 1/2, okay? Now, I'm going to move the x to the negative 5 down. Becomes x to the positive 5. So negative exponent needs to be moved. I'm going to take my x to the negative 2 and move it up. It's this easy. If it's a negative exponent, it's on the wrong side. Move it. So it becomes, move it up, x to the 2. Y to the 3rd is a positive exponent. It does not move. It stays where it's at. Okay, let me go through it again. First thing I did is I reduced the big numbers. 4/8 becomes 1/2. X to the negative 5 comes down, positive 5. X to the negative 2 goes up, x to the positive 2. The y to the 3rd stays where it's at, okay? Now, I can do one more thing. X squared over x to the 5th. Now, I don't want to really do it this way, but you know, I will show it just once. That's the same as x times x over x times x times x times x times x, okay? Now this is the most annoying way to do it because this x cancels that, right? And this x cancels this, and how many x's are left? 3, right? Isn't there an easier way to do that? Isn't there an easier way to do that? Just subtract, right? You guys agree? Just subtract. So Isaac's totally right. So I'm going to have a 1/2, and then I would have an x to the third over y to the third as my answer, okay? The 2 x's here, canceled 2 x's here. There's no x's left on the top because cancel, cancel. And I'm just left with the x there, okay? Thumbs up. Now numbers, plain old numbers can have exponents also, okay? So what I want to do, anytime I see a negative exponent, write a fraction bar. Write a fraction bar. First thing I do, write a fraction bar, okay? That's what I do. Because I know that I'm going to have some fractions. So I'm going to move 4 to the 2 power down. This one comes down, okay? It's a negative exponent. 4 to the negative 2, move it down, it becomes 4 to the positive, okay? X to the negative 3 comes down. X to the positive 3. Y to the 7th, keep it where it's at, okay? Because it's a positive exponent, okay? Now, the last thing I'll do is simplify this a little bit. 4 squared is not 8. 4 squared is not 8. 4 squared is not 8. It's 16. You guys agree? 16, right?
Yeah.
So it should be a y to the 7th over a 16 x to the third. Thumbs up? Okay. It's really not that bad. It looks weird, doesn't it? This negative x, but it's really pretty simple, okay? Ready to turn the page? Okay, turn the page. Now, example 5 is kind of weird. Here's a trick, okay? And I want you to put a little bit of a little note up here, little note, okay? Little note up here. If you have a over b to the negative 1 power, okay? Now it's negative 1 to both of them. I mean, they're both going to be, so they're both going to have to move. So that's just going to be b over a. Because that became a negative 1 power, which brought it down. That became a negative power, which brought it up. Or, note, if I have a over b to the negative n power, whatever n is, like in case it might be like 3, okay, right? That's going to be the same thing as b to the n over a to the n, okay? So the negative exponent made that one go down. The negative exponent made that one go up, okay? And then they both have to be to the power of n, okay? So how does that help me with number example 5? Well, I'm going to rewrite this as x squared over 4 to the third power. Okay, apply the negative, okay? I apply the negative. I'll get a highlighter here so you guys can see what I did, okay? I only did one thing. Took care in the negative exponent. That's all I did. So if it's a negative exponent, it brought that one up and that one down. You okay with that little trick? All right, and then they're both going to be cubed, so this becomes an x to the 6th over 4 to the third. 64. Yeah. You guys will go, okay, on how I got x to the 6th here? This is x squared times x squared times x squared, right? This is x squared times x squared times x squared, which is x to the 6th, right? So then I get x to the 6th over 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. How am I doing? Okay. Last one. Whoo! 6. I can do it. So when I look at 6, I'm like, it looks like a mess. But let's try and take what's inside first. So let's try and simplify. Let's do what's inside first. Okay. So see if I can simplify what's inside first. So let me go ahead, fraction bar, cubed. Okay, I'm just going to do what's inside first. All right, let's do whatever I can. So first of all, big numbers. Negative 2 6. How about negative 1 third? And I love this one because kids see a negative. This is not a negative exponent. It's a negative number, right? That is not a negative exponent. Okay, I'm going to bring the x to the third down. I'm going to bring the y to the 4th up, okay? And I've got more to do, don't worry. I've brought this one down, x to the negative third down, and y to the negative 4 up, okay? I still have x to the fourth on bottom. It didn't move because it's positive. And I still have a y to the third on top, okay? It didn't move. It stayed there, okay? So it's a complicated problem. But what I do is I'm trying to tidy it first. Negative 2 third, negative 2 6 is negative 1 third. I reduced that, and then I moved. If it was negative, moved it down. If it was negative, moved it up, okay? Now, let's tidy this up, okay? So I'm going to have, you ready, a negative 1 third. Okay, let's tidy this up. Okay, let's tidy this up. Y to the 7th, right? I'm adding exponents over x to the 7th. I'm adding exponents, right? Okay. Okay. Now, I'm going to multiply my exponents, but I'm also going to do this. I'm also going to go a negative 1 to the third y to the 21 over a 3 to the third and an x to the 21. Because I can't forget the numbers. I mean, the numbers, this 3 is also going to be cubed. Does that make sense? This 3 is also going to be cubed, right? And this negative 1 is also going to be cubed. Well, the negative 1 is easy because negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1 is negative 1, correct? So, my answer is going to be a negative 1 y to the 21 over 27 x to the 21. Okay, that's a hard one. You guys agree? Let's practice a little bit more, okay? Let's go ahead and open up your journals because we've got some more of these in your journal that we probably have to look at, okay? Right? We need to practice this a little bit. We're used to looking at that one, aren't you, Isaac? That's a hard one. That's a good